starting now.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nanetson Rodriguez. I am a project director at a public health nonprofit called Day One. So today I'll be presenting on behalf of Day One and talking about our involvement in climate change and what we're doing to really involve community members and involve our communities specifically in LA County and the San Gabriel Valley. So I'll just briefly talk a little bit about myself, my background. So my background is I went to UCR. I have a bachelor's in science and anthropology, and I recently got my master's at Cal State LA in public admin. I've done K through 12 STEM education and recruitment for underrepresented and underserved communities, specifically females. And for the last 5 years, I've been working in public policy, community engagement, and outreach. So Day One, now I'm going to talk about Day One. Like I mentioned, we're a public health nonprofit, and our mission is to build healthy, vibrant cities by advancing public health and empowering youth and igniting change. That is our mission. We were founded out of collective vision of concerned community leaders in 1987, and we have expanded the scope of our public health work to include strategies to prevent chronic disease, promote healthy, active communities. And this is through evidence-based policy and public health-oriented city planning. So I would like to go to a question for everybody. And this is, and if you like to answer, you could answer the chat. My first question is, how old were you when you learned about climate change? And so I'll give like 30 seconds for everyone to answer that. And Chloe can tell me people's responses.
Yeah, so I answered, I think it was like 15. Another response is 17, and another response is 19 with a question mark, so somewhere around there.
Yeah, and be as honest as possible. It's okay if it was recently. It's, you know, this is not a right or wrong answer. It's just a question. And then our next question is, where were you when you learned about it? So to kind of help with that question, where were you? Were you in school? Were you at home? So you can just answer in 30 seconds.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so I am pretty sure I learned about it in school, and then our other two responses are both home.
Okay. And then our last question is, what word comes in mind when you think of an environmentalist? So just one word. And I'll give another 30 seconds for everyone to answer.
Okay, so one word we got is nature, one word we got is hero, and I said everyone because I think everyone should be an environmentalist. So those are 3 responses.
Okay, thank you, everyone. And so the reason why I asked those questions is when we think about climate change, especially today, we think about what is the populations that need to know the most about it, and what are those populations and demographics that are in need to know, and what age should we start teaching our younger generation about climate change? When is that time? And so that is a question that we think about all the time at Day One, and the answer is that we should tell them as soon as possible, like when they are starting to learn you know, concepts of how the world works and why the environment is so important to us. Another thing is that when we think about environmentalists, we also need to think about, what does that look like to us? Who is that person? When we Google environmentalist, what comes up in our Google search? What represents an environmentalist today? And when I first started at Day One, I had no prior background in environmental sciences or even in just learning, doing any kind of social justice work or environmental justice work. And it was very intimidating because I was working amongst a lot of people that had those backgrounds, that had that knowledge, that had that experience. And I thought to myself, how do I fit in this equation? And does my voice even matter? Or do I even have stories to talk about when it comes to the environment and what it means to me, and even just climate change in general? And so that kind of gets to my next point of Day One, why we have this philosophy of living loud, living long, and live love. So live loud means that we do advocacy work. Advocacy work that talks about and looks into who are the decision makers in our communities, which is everybody. What is your role in public policy, and how do you get involved in policy work? And then the last section is youth leadership. How do we get our youth involved in policy? When do we start them, and how do we prep them? And I'll get into details in our next couple of slides of how we do that in our agency. The next philosophy is live long. So we think about, whenever we're thinking about our work and our projects, we think about sustainability, climate resilience, which is, to us, education and funding opportunities. How can we create programs that are good for the community and helpful for the community, and where the wording and the information is not too technical, but the community is able to understand it? And how do we allow the community members to tell their story? Like, what ways can we involve the community where they can share about their own experience and their own stories? And how do we change behaviors? When it comes to thinking about the environment, and if we want to see any change in the environment, we have to start with our own behaviors that we do at home. And it can be simple things like not wasting water or turning off the lights to not just save electricity, but also to not waste power. And the last one is live long. Right now, during this pandemic, the outdoors is more essential to us because it provides us space to reflect, to exercise, to be creative, to listen to the natural world. And nature is an outdoor classroom. There's many things to discover about it. It always has something for us to create, like art, music, projects, and other activities. And as we face climate change right now, it's important for us to learn how we can help our natural environment and what ways we can do that. So we use this framework at Day One when it comes to outreach. First, we want to share and acquire knowledge. And that is, for us, educating ourselves and developing partnerships of people that are experts in the field. We're not always the expert when it comes to knowing these specific topics, but we can definitely partner with someone to help us, to also teach us and to teach the communities that we serve. The second one is promote healthy communities. And that is just showing community members what are ways that are not expensive, that are affordable, and that can be doable at home, that can help you in terms of having a healthier lifestyle. And that means physical activity and also mental health education. And then the third one is providing education. So providing free services for our community members. Every service, every program or event that we do is free for the community. And we make sure of that because we work in communities that are underrepresented, underserved, and most of these communities are communities of color. And so we need to make sure that we give them services that are free and that are reachable. The fourth one is building coalitions and networks. Like I mentioned before, we're not the expertise in everything that we talk about. So we do rely on these coalitions and these networks because they help fill in those gaps. They help with providing their knowledge and their expertise in subjects that we may not be, like I mentioned, experts in. And then change organizational practice. So making sure that we keep our government accountable, that we keep our other agencies accountable, and making sure that we also are changing policy as well, or changing the way that education and community engagement is done through government. And so that comes to the last one, influencing policy. How can we get there? How can we create some change in policy? How can we bring a new policy? And it all starts with just involvement, getting community members, getting youth, getting everyone involved, and teach them how to be involved, because that's the key, is how do we get them involved and how can we get them access to be involved. So our target communities are Pasadena, El Monte, and Pomona. We also added a new community recently, which is Bassett Avocado Heights, but we work all around San Gabriel Valley. These are just where our satellite offices are located. And I would say we work all around LA County as well. We're not specific to one city. We do, because of our networks are so large, we do work with other agencies in other parts of LA County. And so these are the different programs and projects we work on. We work on substance prevention services. So that's alcohol and drug prevention and marijuana prevention. And these services are specific for youth. We also work on tobacco prevention. We have a coalition with Nature for All. We're part of the Nature for All coalition. And I'll discuss a little bit about that coalition in the next couple slides. And then recently we have just brought in, we've been doing this work for a while, but the last year we started working on a program called Safe Routes to School, which is specific for active transportation, getting more students and parents to walk, bike, and use other modes of transportation other than a vehicle. And this past summer, we started a new project called Advanced Energy Community, and that is specific on energy efficiency and solar power. And so probably a lot of you all may be thinking, what does substance abuse have, or substance prevention have anything to do with the environment or climate change? Well, it has a lot, actually. Whenever we work on these various projects, we always think, okay, how do we tie it back to the environment? How do we tie it back to the issues that are really important to us today? And when we think about substance prevention, we think about access. If you have a community that does not have access to parks or other green spaces, you have a community that doesn't have programming that is free and that is available for youth or for young adults, what are we giving this community? What are these communities, what do they have access to? And what we're seeing is that our most vulnerable populations, in their communities, we see dispensaries, we see access to liquor stores, we see access to these other substances that aren't making them healthier or isn't really providing them something that is going to get them involved or even have a healthier lifestyle. And so if we provide access to, if we give communities more parks, if we provide them access to these places, then we will see that the community overall will be a better community. But nowadays, we also run into the problem, and this is a term that some of you may have heard of, is green gentrification. We think about, okay, we want to change this community. We want to give this community these amenities that it didn't have before. But then now I'm seeing I can't afford my rent in my at my apartment or my house that I live in anymore because property value is different or higher, I mean. And so we're seeing now community members being pushed out in places where it wasn't a place for most people to live until it started changing, until they started seeing better resources, better amenities. And so these are things that we encounter every day in our services, but it's something that's really important for us to all keep in mind. And so that gets me to youth engagement. Why is youth engagement so important? With our background, we've done most of our focus is youth engagement, because we want to teach the youth how do you make changes in government? How do you become a leader in your community? And it starts with just teaching the youth how to go to a city council meeting and how to speak in front of city council members, which could be very hard for a teenager or someone who's in middle school, because they're nervous. They don't usually talk to adults, and when they do, it's at school or at home with their parents. And so we teach them, we practice with them, we prepare them into how to tell their story to an adult that may not know them, but that needs to listen to them, because their concerns and their voices are just as important as the adults. They are the future leaders of the community. They are going to be the future voters and decision makers. So it's really important that we start involving our youth very early in policy work, and in just learning how to be engaged in the community. So last year, for example, we had a youth summit where we worked with students in Pasadena that actually we helped them organize a summit where they got to talk to and ask questions to city council members and running elected officials that were candidates. And they asked them various questions on what are they going to do in the climate action plan that Pasadena is currently, it hasn't been approved yet, but it's a standing document. And so they asked them, what are you going to do for the city in terms of climate change? How are you going to help protect our community from pollution, and how we're going to mitigate that? And what are some efforts that you as a candidate going to put for this? And so this was all organized, like I mentioned, by the youth, and the youth were the people that were in charge of asking those questions and coming up with those questions. So that is one example of how we want the youth to practice and also prepare for things like this, for opportunities when it comes to talking to elected officials, or just talking to any person in government about their concerns and what are their needs and what are the community needs. But to understand how to do that, we do have to provide youth hands-on learning. So that means taking them on field trips, having them go to different places where they can learn about the environment. And that could be the aquarium, or it could be the Natural History Museum, or it could be just going to listen to a concert, an outdoor concert in their own community. Or it may be just what we've done in the past, doing an alley cleanup and changing it into a place where you can play games and you could spend time with your family and friends. So these are opportunities where they can see visually what we mean by change. If they don't see those things, if they don't get to experience that in person, how do they know change can happen? How do they understand it? And so this is why it's important for us that we have these types of activities for the students to be able to experience. And this is why it's also important for us to have them learn in person with their peers and with, even their families, of what we mean by we want more in our community, and we want to be able to do things outdoors, and we want to be able to have do activities that involve ourselves with the environment. We do also service learning for our youth. We make sure that everything they do counts as volunteer work and counts towards their education. We help youth in terms of a pathway to college and a pathway to job readiness. And it's important for us to do that because a lot of our youth don't have people at home to help them when it comes to filling out a college application, or just knowing where to go or who to talk to when it comes to finding a college, and what majors they should consider. And so we make sure that whenever we are teaching our youth and we have weekly meetings with them, that we discuss these types of topics, because these are topics they're interested in. Just recently, when we had our youth advocacy meeting, which we have every Wednesday, we asked the youth, what is things that you want to learn about? And one of them was managing money and learning how to budget and how to, how to help with finding a college and how to find funding for college. If we're going to teach them topics such as like climate change or, public policy, we also have to teach them how do you get there. And a lot of us, we value education. We want them to go to college, but affordability is one of the biggest things that is a barrier for our students. All of our students go to public school, and most of them go to Title I schools. And so they need these types of support. And so that is something that we as staff members do. We support them, we mentor them. And a lot of us in Day One have been that student where we didn't have someone at home to help us fill out a college application or to help us look for colleges. We had to do it ourselves. And so I think that's what helps the students feel comfortable and also helps them feel that they can achieve it when they see people like us and they see our partners too demonstrate and model that yes, I came from your neighborhood as well. And look, now I'm talking in front of city council to have them pass a policy on tobacco flavor ban. And so those are kind of things that we feel like are important for the students to be able to see. Like I've mentioned, now we're in a pandemic, so community engagement is very different. We have to work remotely. And with that, we also had to do community engagement remotely as well. And so we had to change a lot in how we do approach our community members. And we also had to talk and discuss and also plan how do we reach the community members that may not have access to technology. During this pandemic, we have seen that a lot of our vulnerable populations do not have access to a laptop or to a phone. And if they do, there might be just one in their family. And so how do we reach our students still? And how do we advocate for them? And how do we make sure that they're advocating for themselves? And so that's where I'm going to talk about partnerships and how important partnerships and networking with the coalitions are very important for us and how that helps us continue our messaging and continuing our projects that we're currently working on. So through virtual engagement, what we've done is we have came up with other ways for our students to still be involved and for our communities to be involved, and that is launching virtual events. So one event that we had launched in partnership with the City of Pasadena was called Walk Local Bike Solo. And that event was actually originally called Bike Month, but we changed it to a virtual event that encompassed everything of active transportation. This was right in the peak during COVID and the pandemic. And so like I mentioned, we noticed more people walking and biking, but not a lot of people knew about the safety when it comes to walking and biking. They didn't know basic laws, or they may not know how to repair a bike, where to go to get your bike fixed at an affordable price, or even how to put in a lock, or just other basic lessons or basic things that you need to know whenever you are walking or biking. And so traffic laws were something that we did through social media. We did them as tips, we did them as messaging, but we also had people participate, take pictures of, we did these scavenger hunts, photo contests, and all these other, we also did a virtual event through Zoom where we discussed and talked about some of the programmings and things that community members or residents in Pasadena could utilize. And this was really successful in the sense that we got people to still be involved, and we also had some questions too. We also were able to do a free bike repair station, and that was really cool for the community members. This was completely free. And this was for community members that were low income, community members that could not afford to go to a bike shop. And so that was their criteria when it came to who was able to get these services. And I'm going to just also talk really quickly that we also, with our youth, they started a podcast. And this podcast is run by them. It's they are the speakers. They also created the content. And one of the first issues that they wanted to talk about was the Black Lives Matter movement. The students are when it comes to social justice, this is the most important issue that they're even experiencing in their own homes, in their own communities, and in schools. And the Black Lives Matter movement was a very important topic for them to talk about because it was something that our whole country, and I would say in our whole world, was experiencing, and something that was a need for us to change and to put more attention to. And so they did a podcast on the Black Lives Matter movement, what it was about, why it's important, and why this is an issue that has been an issue for a very long time and something that we need to do something about. And to kind of go and to kind of transition to the other virtual events that we've done, and what we're still doing is things that we're doing a 5K walk kickoff and a virtual 5K walk kickoff, and we're also doing virtual like trivia nights. So like I said, this is what helps us keep afloat with our community members, keep afloat with our youth, and also be able to provide them still some type of programming just through online servicing. And and when it comes to, how do we connect this with the environment? We have a community garden at the Jeff Seymour Center. This is a free community garden that community members could have access to. There's no fencing, nothing that keeps you away from being able to experience the garden. You can smell it, you can touch it, you can look at it. And this is in city of El Monte. And so this community garden we started last year before COVID, and we have continued to work on it and to make sure that our community members are still being involved in planting and harvesting all of the vegetables and fruits that we've been able to grow. And we've been part of the food distribution centers too. That's another way of us still continuing our messaging by providing information and pamphlets and other resources to our community members. So the Nature for All Coalition, and I'll go through this really quick because I know I'm short of time. Sorry about that. The Nature for All Coalition is a coalition that the Day One is a member of. And within this coalition, we work on providing resources to teach others how to be responsible stewards in the outdoors. And this ensures that everyone in the Los Angeles area, no matter where you live, has equitable access to the wide range of benefits that nature can provide. And so we are, so of this coalition, there are 10 environmental leaders and organizations. And we also work on legislation like the San Gabriel Mountains, Foothills, and Rivers Protection Act. And that act is specific to our San Gabriel Mountains. And it ensures the protection of the mountains, rivers, and wild spaces, and to improve access to disadvantaged communities. And I've mentioned this before, access is a really one of the barriers when it comes to our communities being able to experience nature. And that has to do with transportation. A lot of our community members don't have transportation to the mountains or to other natural spaces. So free transit is something that we're working on, with the county to ensure that that communities, specifically disadvantaged communities, are able to experience the mountains or other public spaces. And the latest legislation that we're working on is the Protecting Unique and Beautiful Landscapes by Investing in California Public Lands Act. That's what's also known as. And this act has the San Gabriel Mountains, Foothills, and Protections Act within it. And if you want to learn more about it, I'll have in my next slides where you can kind of, there's a QR code where you can find more information. So this is all of our members. Of course, we do have other members as well, but we want to ensure that a part of our coalition that we have a diverse group of coalition members. And like I mentioned earlier, we need, all of these coalition members are very important to us because they have the expertise that at Day One we may not have. For example, Active SGV, their expertise is in active transportation. They've had years and knowledge of how to create bike lanes in a community and how to assure that we're getting more community members to bike and walk to different destinations in a safe manner too. And so that's something that we always count on them on. Um, and it goes with all the other coalition members too. They have specific missions and specific programmings that they are working on that we involved ourselves with as well, and we involve our youth. In the next couple of weeks, we're going to do partnerships with some of our coalition members on presentations for our youth about the Emerald Necklace in the San Gabriel Valley, about the San Gabriel Mountains, and about other, and hiking essentials and hiking safety that the students need to learn about. And so these are things that, partnerships are really important for us. And like I've mentioned, everything that we do now is virtual. And it's something that I want to talk about because, with all of these things that I've mentioned about our history and what we've done, it would not make sense to not mention that we're in this type of virtual learning and virtual, I would say, virtual engagement. And so it's important for us to learn, especially organizations, how to do that and how to do that effectively, because we might be in this for a little bit longer or maybe for the next year or two. And so we have to prepare ourselves, and we definitely have to be more knowledgeable, and partnerships, like I've mentioned, are very important for us. And so one of the things that I just would like to lastly talk about is when you're thinking about being a steward in your community, or you're wanting to do something around climate change, it kind of goes back to the first questions that I asked. When did you learn about climate change, and where were you? And so this is similar to the kind of questions you have to ask yourself now. Like, for example, for me, I knew I wanted to do something when it comes to environmental protection. I just didn't know how. And I also felt very intimidated because I felt like I wasn't educated enough. But these are kind of questions that you can think about that will help you in terms of how you can fit into this bigger issue. And so one of the first question is, what is the need or issue in your community? You can start with that first. Then develop a solution. What is your long-term outcome? Is there a person or organization working on this? So instead of reinventing the wheel, there might be someone else working on this, and that's great. If there is, can you partner with them? And if so, what do they need? What kind of support do they need? What is your capacity? We're all at this time are working or going to school, and so what time can you commit to? And make sure it's a time that's, I would say, feasible, and something that is flexible, or something that is more realistic. Don't go overboard. We're all human. We all need to have self-care. We definitely need to take care of ourselves. We definitely need to have fun. So, if it's 5 hours a week, maybe 2 hours a week, just start small, and then maybe you can increase your time. And what role do you want? Do you want to be a volunteer? Do you want to be a program assistant? Do you want to be a program coordinator? And you can also think about, what is the long-term roles that I want? Maybe I want to be a project manager. Maybe I want to be a director. So think about those questions as well. And what is your network? Think about friends. Think about classmates. Think about coworkers. Who do they know? And what other projects may they be working on that is similar to what you want to work on, or the issue or problem in your community? And what are your skills? Do you have technical skills? Do you have social skills? Technical skills could be, do you know how to market? Do you know how to use technology in terms of, doing virtual learning online, or creating content for social media outlets? And social is, are you a outgoing person? And if you're not, how do you get there? I would say when I first started at this job, I was pretty shy. I was to myself, and I had to push myself into talking to people and to engaging with people and to be an active listener. That's another thing, be an active listener. And do you have emotional support and accountability? Who's there to support you? Friends, family, significant others, partners. Make sure that they're always there for you, that they're encouraging you, that they're, when you're telling them, this is what I want to do, they're asking you next week, are you doing that? What's the status on that? Because that's what's helped me, and I think that's what's helped a lot of my other friends and coworkers. And who can mentor you? Do you have a mentor at home? And if you don't, who's someone that you look up to? Can they provide you feedback? That is another thing that, you know, is important when it comes to mentorship. So if you are interested in Nature for All Coalition, or even interested in Day One, I have here, you can follow us at Day One Do on our Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. On our link tree in our bio on our Instagram, we have all of these events coming up that you can also be a part of, or that you could, you know, volunteer at, or volunteer with. And then for Nature for All, they have some incredible programming that is free for the community, and that is also great for you if you want to learn more about the outdoors. They also have a lot of resources. So if you're interested in camping or hiking, you don't know what the necessities or things that you need to have, or even the laws when it comes to that, they have all of that resource on their website. And if you want to also support the Public Lands Act, this is the QR code that you can actually scan right now, and then it gives you, you can get access to learning more about the act and how to sign the petition. Here are other resources too, if you're interested in jobs and internships, and I'll provide those links on the chat, or with Chloe so she can send it to everybody. And this is just really just resources. If you're interested in the environment and you don't know where to start or how to start, or who to start with, these links will help you with that. So I want to thank everyone, and thank you for tuning in. I'm sorry if I went over a little of my time, but you know, I just want to end this that, you know, climate change is a very huge, broad issue, but there's always a place for you. No matter what your experience is or what even your background is, everyone deserves to be part of this issue and deserves to be part of the solution. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nanetson, for presenting for Day One and also talking about the Nature for All Coalition. Both awesome organizations working on access issues in regards to the environment. Super cool, and I love your guys' work. I was just wondering, so I know you mentioned volunteering with your upcoming events. Like, what are the opportunities maybe for community college students to get involved with Day One? You know, either volunteering, maybe they can help mentor students, or, you know, as interns.
Thank you. That's a great question. It's actually something I didn't really mention. When I mean youth, I mean K through 12 and college students. So actually, a lot of our volunteers are not just you know, elementary, middle school, and high school students. They're college students. One of the things that I think is great about my executive director is she's one of those people where when we have a college student who's interning or volunteering with us, they're always looking for they're always looking for a job or for the next opportunity, and she finds it. She has the connections, or she finds funding within our own organization to hire them on. And so a lot of our employees that I work with, were actually started off as interns and volunteers. And recently we had a volunteer who, he's just messaged us on Instagram, and he's like, I love the work you guys are doing. This looks really great. How do I get myself involved? And I set up a meeting with him, and I was like, okay, tell me your background. What are your things that you're looking into doing? You know, we interviewed them to kind of see, how do we support you? Like, what are things that you want to learn? Because we can help you with that. And we definitely don't want to give them work, like we don't give college students filing work or anything that isn't learning or isn't skill based. We have them go out in the field, well, before COVID, talk with community members, table, do outreach. And of course, we train them beforehand so they learn about the organization and the projects that we're working on, because we work on a lot of different ones. And I think this helps them. This helps them with being able to talk with people, especially strangers. That was one of the things that a lot of, I would say, college students tell us they don't have the expertise or even the knowledge of how do I talk to a community member about a policy or an issue. And they get a little scared and intimidated because community, you know, people could, you know, either ignore them or say something back to them or, you know, change the subject. So we prep them, we train them, like, this is how you go about a conversation when it comes to that. And so, yeah, if you are interested, you know, you could definitely check out our Instagram page or our website, or you can email me directly. I'll add in my email on the chat, and you could all you have to do is just tell me what are your interests are, what what particular subject are you looking into, and what are your career goals? Like, what do you want to work in? Do you want to work in government? Do you want to work in the private sector? We've had college students that end up working in the private sector, and that's completely fine, because one thing that, like I said, that they need help with or they want help with is community engagement, so that is something that is our expertise, and that's something that we definitely can provide for students.
Yeah, no, it's amazing how you really work to like empower people, within their own skill set in their own community, and kind of use their interests to sort of, build up that personal power. So I want to say thank you so much for your presentation. I think I'm gonna stop the recording unless anyone else has something they'd like to add. Give it a few seconds, but thank you so much for presenting with us today.
Thank you.
Okay, I think I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording. So give me one sec.